Welcome everyone, back for another episode of the Consistently OK podcast. My name's Luke and I'm here as always with Nick.
Hello.
And we're presenting you with a bi-weekly podcast centered around pop culture that we do our very best to make consistently OK just for you. Each month we give you one episode where we dive into something such as a film, TV show, game or a comic, and we break down our thoughts and more on it. Our second monthly episode will be our in-depth series, and this season we're focusing on Batman. From films to animation, we will take you on a journey through the highs and lows, ins and outs of representation of Batman throughout the years. This week we're lucky to have another sponsor, and it comes in the form of Don't Slam Your Podcast, a 2.4 children podcast, and they've sent over a trailer for us to play for you now.
What springs to mind when I say the words 2.4 children to you? An average family unit? What about a 90s sitcom about a family? No? Does this ring any bells? Yes, that family, the Porters. You might remember or have been told that it was just an average and predictable family sitcom, but throw in some realism, pathos, dark humour, spiritualism, and surreal plot lines, including cursed chain letters, poisonous cobras, the accidental killing of neighbours' pets, a cryogenically frozen father-in-law, and believing Dracula had moved in next door, to name but a few. The Porter family, as well as the sitcom, were far from average. Join me, JD Collins and 2.4 Children fans, and Andrew Marshall, the creator of the series, who provide memories of working on his classic series in Don't Slam Your Podcast, now available on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Thanks for that, Don't Slam Your Podcast. All right, so our podcast, Nick, we're going to talk all about Sweet Tooth, which has recently come onto Netflix. It's an 8-episode series, has multiple writers, multiple directors, and crucially, it's also from Team Downey, which is Robert Downey Jr. and his wife, which is a bit of just something. He's doing something after saving the world in Endgame. And decided to make a TV series about a boy who's also a deer.
Yes.
Which you do. So we're going to talk about that. I did think, though, without even considering talking to you about this first, that I would just briefly talk about the comic, because am I right that you've not read the comic, or not all of it at least?
I had read the first issue before watching the show, and then I finished the show, and then I read the first volume. So I have now finished the first volume.
Okay. Well, there are spoilers in this podcast. We are going to spoil the TV show, but we will not spoil the comic too much.
Yes.
But I will briefly go into the comic in a way that doesn't do too much damage to the comic. So it's not ruined, essentially. So I have here the compendium of Sweet Tooth.
Jealous.
Which is yay big. So this you can see if you can see this on our YouTube channel. I'm sure Nick will kindly upload a clip for you, so I'm not just talking about an object that no one can see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So it's absolutely massive. It's pretty big. Not as big as some of the compendiums out, but this collects everything Sweet Tooth. Not Sweet Tooth: The Return, which is the new series from Jeff Lemire, which is a sequel of sorts set in the future. But this comic is very strange. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this comic. But obviously, you can see it's Jeff Lemire. It's written by him, and the artwork is by him as well. It's very Jeff Lemire inside with his artwork. I'm saying I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a bunch of spoilers if you slow down. This comic is very different for the TV show.
Yes.
It has some mega differences. First and foremost, this comic is a horror comic.
Yes.
It's an apocalyptic horror comic. But the TV show, whilst apocalyptic, is also quite fluffy.
Family friendly, yes.
Family friendly. Some prefer to say fluffy. Some prefer to say family friendly.
The whole, hybrids thing.
But anyway, this comic is it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I can tell you that, because it is very violent in some areas. But it's hard to really compare them because they are so different.
Yes. Even after reading that first volume, having read it post watching the show, tonally it is very, very different.
It is very different.
And we'll get into the show, but I'm gonna say I prefer the book, just up front. having just read that first volume, I think it's a better version of it. And I, when we talk about the show, I'll say why. But I've already off that first volume, I'm really keen to read the rest. Like I'm itching to kind of read where it goes and how they do things.
It's a really good comic, and I do enjoy it a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of Jeff Lemire's artwork, which I think I said before previously. It doesn't do it for me. If I was to open that comic in a shop, which I think I did originally with Sweet Tooth, I would be a bit more put off by reading it. But I like his artwork on things like Roughneck and Royal City because I don't know. I think his art just feels better when it's a bit more personal, or it's a bit of more of a realistic story.
Yep.
But with this, I find it maybe oddly a bit unsettling, just with the way it is. And I do like the story a lot. I do, and I mean that. But I quite like the fact that it's not the same in the TV show, because I don't think this would have worked.
Yeah.
So for people who've not read the comic or seen the TV show, for instance, it's very dark. It's very violent. It's basically the outline of the story is that there is this event that happens, and there's a virus which is called the Sick. I think it's called the Sick in the comic as well. It's definitely called in the TV show.
Oh yeah, it's got a name in the comic. I forgot what it is.
Is it called the Crumble? No. Anyway, there's something. It's cool. It's something like the Sick, and look, loads of people start dying and getting sick and get poorly, but at the same time, these hybrid babies are born. Specifically one called Gus, who is a boy he grows up and he can talk, and he's isolated by his dad, inverted commas, which no one can see but you, Nick, but I've said it now. And there's everything goes apocalyptic. Like the world turns into shambles basically, and there are people hunting the hybrids, and some of the hybrids are locked up. Some of them live their lives, but again, the comic is so dark that there isn't really much of a life going on for the hybrids other than Gus, which isn't even that much of a life. But in the TV show, it's played out differently. But it's dark. It's really, really unsettling. Like I said, the comic itself, and you've got these children. Some of them are half deer, like the main character Gus is. Some of them are half pigs. Some of them are like some of the what's the word? Rabid.
Yeah.
They're super violent, and there's a lot of killing, and it's a lot of killing of children and things. So it's really dark.
It's called The Affliction.
Down a million times. The Affliction, yes, that's it. It's a bit weird that they changed that as well in the TV show. I don't know why, but
yeah, I think it's darker, isn't it?
And a lot of the characters have changed. There's a lot of differences in the characters in the comic to the TV show. So one thing you should already take away if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested is that this is one of those scenarios where you should read the comic and watch the TV show as well. Usually I would say you read the comic before you see anything, because most of the time that's what it's based off. This is a little bit different because, and Jeff Lemire said it in interviews recently, is that he was happy that it changed, because since he's written this, there's been so much of this sort of thing, apocalyptic TV shows. You've got things like The Walking Dead, that this felt a bit out of place now. So they've changed up, and I think it works for the better, because I don't think this would have worked on screen what the comic is like anyway.
Yeah, I'm probably the other way around. I think it would have worked better had they done it as it is in the comic. It would have been darker, and the audience would have been completely different. But
that's why I think it needed something different, because I think there is a lot of this out there now.
Yeah,
not necessarily hybrids.
I think that's the thing. I think the idea is original enough that I'd be curious about it. In that I'd be, I feel like if they had followed the book, it would have just been more interesting to me. Which I wouldn't have landed on if I hadn't have read that first book. So it's definitely something that you should go and read the comic for, just to kind of see where they're coming from. But yeah, I think I kind of fall in the camp that I almost wish it was closer to what they got in the book tonally.
I mean, I guess you'd never know. I mean, unless in the future they redo it again, which of course they could do. But
yeah,
I mean, I could be sitting here, if this had come out as it was for the comic, I was like, oh, it's the perfect representation of the comic and it's so good. But I don't think, because this has got such love now, and it's got such good critic scores and audience scores, and not that you should base everything on Rotten Tomatoes, but if you want an overview of people coming together and what they've got, then this hits. Like, you know, this is something that my nephew has watched now as well. Both my nephews have watched it, I believe he said. And like, you know, your parents could watch it, your friends could watch it, and I feel like there is a little bit of something in there for everyone. But with the comic version, you know, I don't think it wouldn't be something you would talk about. And I feel like there's a lot of that stuff about at the moment where some of it's too dark that not everyone can enjoy it or watch it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just
yeah, I think I always just fall into the kind of camp of like I think there's a difference between it being dark for the sake of it being dark, and a difference between it being dark because at the core of the story, the kind of like emotional current is like mature in nature.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing that the show doesn't have, is that it's trying to create a world that's like, I don't know, likable. And I think
of course, that's
that's the thing that I think they missed out on, is that when I read the book, I was like, oh, this world's way more interesting to me. Like, I want to know the people inhabiting this world. Whereas the world in the series, I was kind of like, meh. I feel like I know what these people are doing. That it just didn't land with me.
I mean, there's not much to. I mean, we're obviously talking about a TV show anyway, but there's not much to the show. Like, it doesn't really. My wife summed it up in a way which was like, she's not really gained anything from it. Like, she's watched it and it's finished, and she kind of felt what the beats were going to be. And I guess it is quite similar. Again, I'm saying that it's different because, I mean, there's a lot of this dark stuff about it as well, but there's a lot of fluffy, family friendly, stuff. I don't know why I keep saying fluffy, but there's a lot of this stuff that is out there as well. But I kind of just thought, so I did like it. I liked the TV show, but I read the comic a long time ago. I've been rereading a little bit of it now. I think maybe for me, when I read it, because I was a little bit put off by the artwork as well, but when I did read it, I was like, this is really dark. It's really good, but it's very dark. And when this came out, I thought, I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know that it was going to be family friendly. I hadn't seen any of like the post-production and photos or any of the trailer or anything. I just said to my wife, like, this is based on a comic. It's a really good comic. Let's watch it. And then as like the first 2 episodes, I was like, this is completely different. Like, you know, Dr. Singh is completely different in the comic with his morals and stuff. And obviously there were some huge changes, like Jep. Big man, essentially. Yeah. He's completely different. I mean, first off in the comic, he's white.
Yeah.
And he does some really dark stuff in the comic, which you won't know yet, but he does a lot of dark stuff compared to what he does in this comic, where he's basically like this big, like, I don't know, friendly giant who, you know, helps Gus along the way, even though he's reluctant, but you know he's going to do it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, like the end of the first volume is equivalent to the ending of the first season, in that the characters are basically in a similar place, slightly. Gus is. Everyone else sort of isn't really there. But that hit home way more than the ending of the series for me. In that I was like, fuck. With the series, I was just like, okay, sure.
But then I think for me, because I've read all of the comic, I'm rereading it again now, but it's hard to see where they go in the TV show, because it is quite different in the comic, and it's so bad in the comics of what happens and what goes on that eventually they're probably going to have to rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is, because I know it's so different to the comic.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking, I'm trying not to think all the way through. I was saying to Yannicka, oh yeah, okay, so this could happen, but I don't know. So I try not to spoil it for her, but obviously I get so hyped. I'm like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, what's this guy going to do? I'm like, well, he does this in the comics, and I'm like, that's completely different to what he did in the comics. So I'm just drop everything I know. I think when I realized how different it's going to be, I think halfway through, I think I read the interview with Jeff Lemire where he was like, yeah, we knew what path they were going to take, and he was really happy that these characters are out there and either different. I mean, there are characters in there that have huge roles in the TV show that aren't anything to do with the comic, like the lady who, what's her name? The lady who has the zoo, who looks after it. With she's not even in the she's not in the comics.
I wondered that because when I saw the zoo was like Essex County, I was like, that's another Jeff Lemire book. No. Is that? But I was like, I swear he did Sweet Tooth before Essex County. Maybe he did it around.
Amy. Her name is Amy. She's not in it. She's not in the comics.
Okay.
So again, I was then thinking, who is this character? I do not remember from the comics. But she's not in it. So once I sort of realized that, I kind of let go and I kind of leaned into it more, because when I saw the first episode, so it's a bit of background. Again, it's 8 episodes long. It's all on Netflix now. You can watch all of it. It's quite a nice thing because a lot of the stuff now we've been watching weekly, haven't we? With a lot of stuff we've been talking about anyway. So you can see it all now. And the first, I think it's shot. It looks really nice, doesn't it? Like, it's pretty beautiful. The scale, some of the scene, especially when they're going on when they leave the compound.
Yeah.
And it's him and Big Man going for a walk and stuff. And I think it looks really good. I think the actors do a pretty good job. I mean, it's really hard. I think I told you before, I find some, like the kid who played Anakin Skywalker and stuff, I just can't, some kid actors, quality. I find, and the kid who played Gus, I mean, fair play, he did really well, bearing in mind he walked around with fake antlers on his head for, a whole season. I find some of them so hard to engage with. I'm just like, oh man, I just don't believe that you're a deer or whatever. But he did well, and what the material was and what the show was, I think it looked really good. Some of it is corny, isn't it? Some of it is sort of like there is 20 minutes of every episode where you think, oh, this is just a conversation that's just so, you just have to do it because you have to do this next bit. It has to link the story, but it's just same old. Like, we know this is a situation. Like, we know this person is probably going to be bad and things. But then there was so much in that I liked. Like, I love the flashback stuff with the dad, which is different to the comics as well. I loved him as an actor. I thought he was really good.
Yeah, Will Forte is really good.
Will Forte. Yeah. I mean, I'm going in all kinds of directions with this as well. So if you're trying to look for a really solid outline of season 1 of Sweet Tooth, then you've come to the fucking wrong place. I think it's mainly because I thought, because we haven't spoke again, we probably said this again, but we haven't spoke about it. I don't know if you liked it or you didn't like it, and I couldn't remember if you read the comic or not. Not that I need to know every single comic you've read. I do have a list. But I actually thought you would like it more than you're saying that you did. So I think that's kind of which makes this episode more fun, which is like with several things that we talked about, because I was sure you thought it was going to be good, but I'm surprised that you've. Now I feel like I'm trying to convince you as to why I liked it, and trying to convince other people to go and watch it.
Yeah, I think I'm just very middle of the road with it. Like, because I absolutely love Jeff Lemire, so I went into it being like, Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite comic book writers and illustrators. Like, I absolutely love his art, and I went into it being like, okay, it's going to be odd, but I think it's going to have like a really solid emotional core. And after the first episode, I was sort of like, okay. And I can't say I had the desire to continue watching it, in that I was like, I've got to watch it because I knew we were talking about it. But I think had we not been talking about it, I probably would have got through 4 or 5 episodes and been like, I'll finish it at some point.
Oh man!
Like, I just did that with Jupiter's Legacy. Like, I enjoyed Jupiter's Legacy, the comic. Never read the second volume because it took ages to release, and I read Jupiter's Circle and all that stuff. But the show I watched because I was like, okay, I like the comic, I'll give it a watch. And first episode I thought was great, and then it did the same as Sweet Tooth, where I was like, I just don't have the desire to like continue this. And I finished Sweet Tooth, but at the end of it, both me and my partner kind of said like, I'll watch a second season, but I'm not like
longing for it.
Yeah, like I need to know where it's going. And I think it was a combination of things. I think it was just like the CGI was a bit poor in places, and it sort of took me out of it, where I was like, this just feels a bit ropey.
I don't think it was that bad. They used puppets quite a lot, didn't they? I saw.
It wasn't so much them. It was that there's like a couple of shots where I think there's a shot where there's all the purple flowers and Gus is walking across like a bridge. And that looked really, really...
Yeah, it did. It looked bad. It looked last minute editing. That's what it looked like.
And I was a bit like, what a weird thing to not have the budget for, because that could have looked beautiful. Like that could have looked like, oh my God. And it didn't. And I think that's the thing that was missing, is that like Jeff Lemire's books always have this, they just always have heart to them, where it's like, no matter how dark things are, there's something in it where you're like, oh, like at the end of the first book, without spoiling things directly, something bad happens, and then it's followed by like this moment of kind of acceptance and like, oh, okay, like he's not as screwed as I thought he was. Whereas the show sort of just ended, and I was like, okay. I mean, I can probably guess the beats that they're going down now. I don't think there's any real... I guess there was just no stakes. Like, I didn't get the stakes. I think the idea of him being like, I need to go and find my mum is just not as engaging as like what's in the book. The book is like, trust me, I will get you here. And then you experience the world through the eyes of this person who has never experienced that world and thought the world was on fire. And then the TV show was like, I've got to go find my mum. And it was just a bit like...
But do you not think it's like quite a lot of character building? That's what I took away from the first season. They've built up these characters now. Obviously they've changed like Jeff and everything like that. Yeah. He's ended up, he's completely different path from the comic, like you said. But like, he ends up with a character who's not even in the comic. Like they're together at the end of the show, go and get the kids and stuff. But I felt like they kind of, obviously, like you said, they've only taken a kind of a small chunk. Like if not everyone's going to see the comedy again, but it's a fraction of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this first half, this season 1, let's say they do 4 seasons, if it gets that far, and season 2 is where the stakes are really going to come into, aren't they? Because they're in this compound, and there's the stakes are there now, aren't they? Like those two have to go and save the kids. Gus has to convince Dr. Singh, not to chop him up for, the cure and everything like that. So they'll be there, but again, they could have got to that point quicker. There's, like I said, those beats of like 20 minutes where they probably could have taken that dialogue out. They could have got to the 3 episodes at the end. Could have been more stuff at the compound, but again, they're spreading out, aren't they? Because they're hoping, hoping that it gets a second season. And
I think
you're right. The stakes were lacking a bit. The mama thing was a bit like, but I thought they did what they did do really well. I did think the pacing and the way they structured the season in terms of, okay, so this is this bit with the opening bit, and it's all about Gus and the compound. Then there was a bit outside and like the bit with the train and things. Mm-hmm. But then there was a flashback episode, which I felt came at the right point. And I really liked the Dr. Singh episode as well.
Yeah.
Like with the sort of, Desperate Housewives vibe, street.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite unnerving as well, because, especially when they're drinking a cup of tea when they've just set a house on fire.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of shit that if this situation was to become real, that there are fucking people out there that would be like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So,
yeah,
they're just waiting for an opportunity to, like, I don't know, just feel like they're better than people. It's just, And I thought he was really good as well as Dr. Singh as well.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. It's just, again, his character arc. I felt like it was just playing it safe, in the sense that it was like, he's the guy who's like, I don't want anything to do with that, but I'm gonna save the woman I love, and then gets dragged back into it, and then ends up having to do what he didn't want to have to do to save her. I feel like that's something that's just like seen it too many times. You knew it was going to happen, and it didn't feel at the end. I should have felt, fuck, like I don't want you to do that, but instead I felt like, okay,
do it.
And then I was like, I guarantee you'll meet Gus. Like, that will happen.
But no one really got anywhere, did they? Like, Gus didn't find his mum.
That's the thing. It's like, yeah, but I
one thing he was told not to do, he did. The only person who made any progress really was Jet.
Yeah, who sort of had a bit of an arc. But again, it wasn't the arc that I assume he's going to have in the book based off of that first volume. Like, the interesting thing about the first volume to me is that it ends at a point where I'm like, I genuinely don't know what Gus is going to do, because the thing that he left his safety for isn't what he thought it was. Whereas the show, the whole premise is like, I'm just going to find my mum. That's still there. Like, in my head, I'm like, well, Gus is going to get out the compound and he's going to go back trying to find his mum, who is also in it. Like, his mum is shown in it in the Antarctica or whatever, finding a boat. And I was a bit like, it just felt like it was treading similar territory to a lot of other things I've seen, where they've gone for that sort of teen, like family-friendly adventure story. And I felt like this could have been like a Jurassic Park Stranger Things vibe. Like, Stranger Things, I think, nails the like family tone with the horror. And Jurassic Park, the first one anyway, does the same, where it's got this family tone and this kind of sense of like optimism and hope, but mixed with like, oh my god, there's fucking T-Rex there. And there were like raptors. And I feel like Sweet Tooth could have gone down, like, if they wanted to really mix up the story, that's the sort of like, go for the family horror, as opposed to going for the like fantasy adventure story. And I feel like after reading the book, that's where the tone has broken for me. Like, the tone of the book is this, like you said, it is a horror. Like, it is fucking bleak. And that's really apparent by like the third issue. It's like, oh fuck. People are awful. And then
what happened to you, Jeff?
Yeah, it's like, they're never going to get better. And I feel like that's the core of the book, is that it's about people, and it's about trust, and it's about all this kind of thing, and how that doesn't always work out and stuff. And I just don't feel like the show matched the tone correctly. I feel like it tried to just take the name and the character and then just go, we're going to make something completely
family friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they have done, isn't it?
Yeah, I just don't feel like it's mixed. I don't feel like it's totally there. It's
I guess so. I mean, I guess I would like to see this, like the comic version on the screen. Like, I would like to see it, but I was, because it's been a while since I read it. This just felt like not. Yeah, like it is the same thing. Like, yeah, he's right. It's Dr. Singh. He's going to save his wife and all this stuff. And yes, the likelihood in this version, which is different from the comics. So I'm not spoiling the comic here because it's completely different, but the likelihood is that he'll save his wife, or his wife will sacrifice herself, or, you know, he'll sacrifice himself, or something that we've all seen before. But
yeah,
I just don't see how that, if that was one of the first things that came out that was similar to, like, to The Walking Dead and stuff like that, great, all for it. It would have been perfect. But I think it's probably the right move, and I would think that's what someone like Jeff Lemire has thought, and that's what he said, isn't it? Like I said, he's come out saying there's too much of this stuff out there now. We wanted to do something different, but yeah, again, it's different, but it's not that different from some of the stuff out there, I guess, either. It's just
I totally get
it. I just thought it was from the start to the end. I just thought this has been fine. Like you said,
yeah.
It's not like I'm. There are some TV shows out there where you think, God, man, like like what was that recently that we both said we really enjoyed? The Mayor of Easttown.
Oh my God. Yes.
Such a good detective show. Like if they announced a season 2 of that, I'd be like, I'm in.
Yeah.
There's there's a Tom Hiddleston and Hugh Laurie one called The Night Manager.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, right. Let's get another season of that. There are some shows that you're just desperate for, like when The Sopranos used to be on, or things like that. Or, I used to look forward to things like The Newsroom and stuff like that because I really like TV shows because they were so well written. This, don't get me wrong, I'm not desperate. If they said this is going to come out in X amount of 2 years' time, I'd be like, cool. When it lands, I'm going to watch it. But I just thought it was entertaining enough. In a time where I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to watch next. Let's just put this on because I know it's based on a comic and I know we're going to talk about it. I thought it was good. I just enjoyed it casually from beginning to end. But you, like Yannicka, my wife, I think you could just take it or leave it. Like if I said to her, we're not going to watch it now, we're halfway through and we're not enjoying it, I don't think she would have cared. I think she was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. I think I just thought it was fine. I think the disappointment comes from the fact that I'm such a big Jeff Lemire fan that I'm kind of like, I know what his writing is like, and I know he's not written the show, but I think just knowing his writing is so good, it's sort of like you had an opportunity there to really tap into it.
I mean, I guess you could say it's similar to anything. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you want to subscribe to extra content, you can subscribe and listen to things like us talking about the latest Venom trailer.
Yeah.
And it's like we've talked about Venom. Venom, the way he is in comics, the way he's perceived in the films, like he should be bad guy first before he turns into an anti-hero. And it's if they did a Batman film based on The Batman Who Laughs, which is a story you and I both read over the last few years and we both really enjoyed, but they made that family friendly.
It'd be shit.
It'd be shit, and I would probably be sitting here thinking it was shit. But with Sweet Tooth, because it was a long time ago for me, and I don't know, because it was just such a casual watch, I think that's what I enjoyed. I didn't feel like, probably because there weren't any stakes.
Yeah.
I think I just thought, well, there were stakes, obviously. Like, no one wants to be chopped up if you're half deer. Like, no one wants that.
Yeah.
That's the stake. No one wants their wife to die because of the sick.
Yeah.
But, of course, there are stakes, but it didn't feel... It wasn't like, can't wait for the next episode.
Yeah.
And if it was a weekly thing, that was my other thing. If this was a weekly thing, I probably would have felt a bit more different. But because I watched it all, I think I watched it all over about in the space of a week.
Yeah.
I think that's why I probably enjoyed it more than I did, because it was just felt like one long film that I just done and dusted it. So
yeah,
I don't think we've really done a good job of, if Netflix were listening, so they probably are not very pleased with us, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think we've sold it very well.
I mean, I big Stranger Things.
That's what you get. That's what you get, Netflix. But I say Stranger Things. That's another series where you kind of like. I swear, Yannick, when I talk Yannick is getting a lot of name drops. I swear, like, when's that out again? Because we want to see the next season. Like, when is it coming? When is it coming? August.
Exactly. It is out this year.
No. Is it? Didn't it get moved again?
I swear it's out this year.
No, I think it got moved again. I don't think they finished filming.
I thought they have, because I swear David Harbour said they'd finished filming.
Can't trust David. Can't trust Big Dave. Not after Hellboy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that was cracking.
This is it. This is the moment.
I'm searching for it. I'm gonna.
This is the fourth season of Stranger Things, yeah.
Yes.
Wait, are we? Have you disliked Sweet Tooth so much that we're now turning this episode into a Stranger Things episode?
No, not at all. But
I'm down.
Need to confirm this. It is definitely this year.
Is this you just assuming that? Or have you read on Google that says 2021?
Yeah, everything says 2021. Like, all of it says it's out in 2021. So,
oh, surely I thought it was going to be the summer again. That's what I originally thought. In my head, it was August, but mean, if they're smart, they'd put it at Halloween again, wouldn't they?
Thing is like they could easily just announce it the week before. Like, I feel like they don't need hype. They can literally just go, it's out next week. And everyone will be like, oh my God.
They could do. That would suck as a person who runs a comic shop, because I would not get any time to get the stuff that I wanted in for it. Because all of the stuff is gone now. And it's like, oh, we're re-releasing everything, but it'll be too late by then.
Yeah.
It's like now with Loki. It's like, hey, get in all these Loki comics. We'll ship them in 3 weeks. It's like, Loki will be done by then.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway. I feel like it's out. Okay. But yeah, I think tonally Sweet Tooth should have been, if they wanted to make it a bit more family friendly, they should have gone for Stranger Things kind of feel. I think especially with like The Walking Dead's ending, right? And there is going to be this big gap on TV of like the big pandemic film, TV show, sorry. And I know we've got Why the Last Man coming, which could fill that spot. Like, that could be insanely good if it's done.
Unless they change it so for TV they keep all the men in it.
Yeah, that'd be awful. Or like he's got a mate that's a best friend that's a guy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. What's the monkey called in it? His name is.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That would be so good.
That would be awful. But
it'd be so bad, obviously, but so good it would be. So bad it would be good.
Yeah.
It's the.
So and I feel like Sweet Tooth could have been an interesting one to replace The Walking Dead in terms of like the comic has a similar vibe in that it's like clusters of people and how they're living in this like shit world, but with this overarching idea that it's like somebody who's never been out in the world. I feel like that is interesting enough to do a show about, even if it was going to be darker. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I
still think they should have. I still think there are some of the comic they should have put in the TV show. I'm not saying that it should have all been all this like beautifully shot. Is regardless, yeah, it should be beautifully shot. But yes, they have dumbed it down to a bit where like younger kids could watch and stuff like that. But there are some elements they should have brought over the comic, which again would be big spoilers. But I think they've changed some of the wrong things. But it'd be interesting to see what you think when you've read the whole comic, because I would think there are bits in that comic that you even think would be, that's a bit crazy to bring over. Maybe not, but
I'm sure there are. Like, I've definitely read things where I've gone like, that will literally never, ever go on film. Like, it's just too far. No. Like, there's already a bit in the first volume of Sweet Tooth, whereas like that would be a really hard sell. Like, I feel like
it gets worse, because it does get worse. Like, there's sexual stuff in there, and there's
I feel like
dead hybrids everywhere. It's just it's really dark. And it's I just, for me, I think I just don't know how they get that on the screen. I mean, on something like Netflix, which I guess has done some darker stuff as well, but I think they've looked at it and they've thought, we like the idea, but we're going to tweak it. And again, it's obviously just pandering to an audience, but I mean, they're not looking at this for merchandise things, are they? You're not going to go and buy a Gus action figure. Or maybe you will. But it's to try and get, and in turn, for someone like Jeff Lemire, you get eyes back on the comic, don't you?
Yeah, gotcha. That's probably the best thing about it, is that
so you get it in a full circle, whether it's exactly like the comic, you get that, and then people like, oh, I've heard the comic. Let's say someone's listening to this now, you would hope maybe they would go and pick up the comic, because.
But then if it's a kid.
Yeah, the kid can't go and get the comic, but then the kid's happy because he's got the TV show and he shouldn't be reading the fucking comic.
I know, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was watching. Like, when I was reading that book, I was like, fuck. Like, if a kid went, I absolutely love Sweet Tooth, I'm going to go read the book now, and then got to that like second or third issue where there's something really dark in it, and they're like, I'm
going to do it. I'm going to go into work at Christmas this year, and I'm going to wait for a family to walk in. Like, what's your kid like for Christmas? Loves that Sweet Tooth. Like, has he or she read the comic? Because it is identical.
Yeah, it's the exact same. It's an adventure.
It's like when I was at work, when there's a manga called Beastars, which I've not read. Probably should, because it's like one of the best sellers. But I remember this parent came and was like, oh, what's this manga about? It's got a wolf in a school uniform. I was like, yeah, it's fine. And it's like for some young kid. I went back and my colleague was like, did you just sell Beastars for a kid? I was like, perhaps. And they were just like, it's not for kids. It's like very sexual and very bad. I was like, oh. So then I had to go read I think I read it like straight away. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? But it's because I can't read everything, can I?
This is true.
What I should have done is gone back and get some advice about it, but not with Sweet Tooth. I'm going to give all the kids Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
When they ask for a comic that they can recommend.
Exactly the same.
Thanks, Netflix.
Yeah. That was the very odd thing, is that I was like, I get you're pitching for that market, but at the same time, the source material is just so much heavier that
it's hard to think of someone reading it. I guess maybe it was Robert Downey Jr. or Jim Mickle, who I think is the main writer, or at least the main director, being like, that was a good comic, but how can I make this child friendly? I was like, well, kill out all the killing of children, step one. And tone down the main villain and the preacher father, and you've got yourself a kid-friendly TV show, my friend.
Stop calling it sickness and affliction and just call it sick.
Yes, call it sick. Yeah.
I think the thing with it, right, is that they tried to make it cutesy. I think they
can see that as well.
Yeah,
I think that's why the Gus thing didn't work, because he seems comes off in the comic as older than he is.
Yeah, he seems like a teenager in the.
Yeah, and he looks like a teenager.
Yeah,
but in this, it just doesn't feel like that kid would or should last in that world.
Yeah,
like, there's no reason for Gus. He doesn't do anything that special other than he can jump pretty high.
Yeah,
and he can smell, and obviously he's got his sense of height. But it's for all the people that have died in that apocalyptic world, from when he's left the compound all the way to wherever they're going. I can't remember where they're going now. Colorado.
Yeah.
Then he shouldn't make it, regardless if he's got big man with him. So
because he's 9 in the.
Yeah, he's 9. Yeah.
So, but he just looks way older, and he looks like he could. He looks like he could handle himself in the comic, like if he got into a situation. Whereas
in this, he doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a stretch, regardless of what he is, that he can get that far with all these things going on. It's that's the thing with the cult in the not cult, but the group of the animals, the children, the teenagers. That's different in the comic. That's grown ups.
Yeah, I could see that.
And they're really violent as well. They're like really bad. And obviously, I think if you put that on a TV show now, that would have felt the same as things you've seen before. Like, you've seen all these groups of killers and everything. So in this, they turn them into young children. But then when you watch that as well, you think, okay, I've seen this as well. I think we've just seen everything, Nick. We just
pretty much.
We give up.
I think the biggest thing, and this is like, this has to be a spoiler, because I can't say it any other way. So if you're going to read the book, just mute it here, skip forward a minute, 2 minutes, whatever.
I'll find the page on the comic and we can put it
up. Essentially, I think the thing is like, at the end of volume 1, Gus finally meets people like him. And in terms of the book, it's also the first time you've encountered them. Like, they're not anywhere else. It's just purely him and Jep going through this world and like encountering things. In the series, even though that moment is there, and you've got the moment where he hugs the girl who turns out to also be related to the character, which I was like, sure. Even though you've got that moment, because you've seen them throughout the rest of the series, it loses that impact. Like, the bit where Gus is hugging the kid is just like, I mean, they were obviously going to cross paths. Whereas in the book, you're like, I literally don't know if there's any left. Like, they're talking about hunting them, and they're talking about, like, you know, shit going on, but you haven't seen them. And then he sees them, and it's like, that's the moment of like heart, that it's like Gus is in an absolutely shit situation, but for the first time, he's not on his own.
I mean, that's the thing, but that's the other thing with Amy not actually being in the comics.
Yeah.
Like if you don't put her in there, then that's your ending of season 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the same as the comic with him meeting other kids, and that's your link into the beginning of season 2.
Yeah.
With their backstory, obviously they did because it's an 8-episode, 1-hour episode
thing.
Each thing. Then they've made a sub story because they had to have these stories. But it's strange because they could have not easily. I mean, I'm not a writer in TV, but there's enough material there with Singh and Jep and stuff to really, and Dad and everything. They probably could have got away without the Amy stuff. But I think they're trying to make Abbott, the General Abbott. I think they're trying to make him seem as bad as he is without doing what he does in the comics. And the best way was to see him kidnapping all the children.
Yeah, he sort of came across as a bit like a Panto villain as well. I don't know what it was about him, but he sort of just
he looked
like the kind of character that would come on stage and people would be like, "Boo!"
Yeah, he's not that intimidating, is he? That's why I felt like he also looks like a wrestler that I watched on this wrestling called NXT. He looks like a guy. You'd have to Google it. It's called Tommaso Ciampa.
Okay.
It looks just like him. So I was like, what the fuck's Tommaso Ciampa doing in Sweet Tooth?
Yeah.
But they look identical. So he was, that was, I mean, that thing as well. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
But he, everyone now Google Tommaso Ciampa and General Abbott if you've not seen the show. Yeah. Is the fireworks thing. I think that was a thing that maybe ruined it for Yannicka, which was quite near the end. It's just like, man, she set off all these fireworks around her zoo, but she's not done anything.
Yep.
Like, and the kids got caught within 5 minutes. It was just, like
that felt like somebody going like, we can't have a massive shootout, so let's launch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So let's so get it. Bloody Beaver and his love of toys.
I didn't understand that, by the way, because he's like not quite a hybrid, right? He's like more beaver than human.
Yeah.
And I did like.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure
because the book doesn't seem like that. Like when they show off the kids at the end of the first one,
human.
They look more humanoid with animal parts, whereas the beaver seems legit.
I think there's one again. Because I haven't read it for so long, but I'm pretty sure there's a couple of the animals that look more animal than humans, and they're the ones who are rabid.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think it's a fox or a tiger or something, and that one has more animal in it than human.
Right. So there is like a difference. There's like ones who are like.
Yeah. If I remember right, I think I'm only on what would technically be volume 2.
Okay.
And I haven't read it since it came out, which was God knows when, like must be 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe less.
Yeah, it must be around then. Because that's the thing that I didn't feel like the show did very well to say is that there were, like, I'm sure it's said in passing, but I feel like they could have shown us like an actual like rabid one where you're like, oh, they're not all.
Yeah, there's nothing to worry about. Well, the only worry that they have in the TV show version isn't it that they think the hybrids caused
the virus
sick.
Yeah.
So, but in the comics, it's different because, it's different.
Yeah. Odd.
Yeah.
Don't know.
All right. Wow.
What would you give it consistency rating?
That's what I was gonna ask you to wrap it up. I would give it just out of pure, this is easy going to watch, which is probably something I felt like I needed. I'd probably give it 5 out of 10.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was borderline 6, just because I thought it was fine. Like I enjoyed it, but I think it didn't do a lot for me. But I enjoyed it for what it was. But I'm not longing, like I said, for season 2.
Yeah.
What about you? Is that lower than you thought?
Yeah. I went into this thinking I'm going to say a 5.
Oh wow!
Because, like, having watched it with only reading that first issue, that was where I was like, yeah, this is fine. And then it's only after reading the volume that I was like, oh, they've missed a trick. So maybe season 2, unless they go in a really different direction that's really entertaining, or if they continue this, then I feel like season 2 could be a lower rating for me. But
maybe I've gone too low. I mean, if you're saying 5, then mine must be a little bit higher. But I feel like I'm like halfway there because I see the good bits in it, and I also feel a bit like it could have gone a little bit different. Like it could have maybe been a little bit darker, but not. Again, like I said, I didn't really want anything too dark. That's probably why I did enjoy it. Like I said, because it just was just so easy going, and it felt like a bit of a difference to some stuff I've watched recently. So,
because I just thought it was bang on, consistently okay.
On, consistently okay.
I thought it was DK3.
That's what DK3,
yeah,
consistently okay. DK3.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our Sweet Tooth episode. We hope you enjoyed it.
Before we finish, the last thing that I actually did want to say that is actually a major plus point. I really like the soundtrack. Like, not the
soundtrack is good.
Soundtrack, I thought they nailed the choices.
Soundtrack is good.
Yeah, did very well.
That and Invincible soundtracks. They're 2 ones that I've got.
Yeah,
on my
nailed it.
My music. Wow. So now is it the end?
Yeah.
Now it's the end. Fantastic. Well, we hope you enjoyed it. If you do want to hear more from us or find out more about us, you can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at ConsistentlyPod. You can find us on YouTube by simply searching for Consistently OK Podcast. We stream on all podcast services, with each episode coming out on Wednesdays. If you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, for 99p a month, you can subscribe for extra content where we talk about various subjects, usually around pop culture things.
Yes, 100%.
100%. And that's it from us then, my friend. Our next episode is going to be our in-depth Batman series episode, and it's going to be the gloriously bad Batman Forever.
Quality. Just
quality.
Tommy Lee Jones, Two-Face. Yes.
I already feel like I'm going to spoil it and say I just wish the Riddler was the villain.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually quite excited.
There's no need for anyone.
There's
no need to tune into the next one then, because that's the whole episode. That's all I have on my notes is I wish Riddler was the only villain.
Yeah.
There's not really. There's much more. So you can join us for that on our next Consistently OK podcast. Thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Nick.
Thanks, dude. Always a pleasure.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
Bye.